Hey guys, we're talking about BPTH. I longed and shorted this. Clean market open long, in my opinion, and decently clean short that ended up in going into an offering, so that ended up working out. Market open longs. We'll talk about it. So, what makes this a good market open long, right? What makes not only a good market open long, but why should you avoid longing this in the pre-market? So, a couple of things first. BPTH was up. I got online around here. It's up like 60 something percent, 60, 70%, 60%. And we're in a market where we've gotten multiple 250% moves past couple days. It's definitely a stronger market over the past, during this week with a lot of range. And we had two tickers that were up over 200% in the pre-market, right? AGBA, TIRX. Those will never be good longs, right? Because unless there was a clean long move in the pre-market for those stocks, they're already too extended. They're extended on their dailies. They're extended in the pre-market, and I always say, mostly the first move is the best move when it comes along. And what does that mean? So it's like first move is the best move. I really mean the first move after like you get an initial pop and a pullback. Assuming that pop is, if this pop was like 300%, then I'm not really looking on that pullback for a long entry, right? But this pop, about 100%. And then we had the first structure. So how does the stock fade, right? So after it pushes, what's the volume looking like? We got about 200K pretty consistently, which is okay. It's not super impressive, but it's not the worst. But I saw this big down only pullback, right? And then I saw VWAP here, and I was like, oh, if VWAP looks like this, right? Like we're getting all these VWAP rejections, right? So it's really common on manipulated stocks to fake VWAP resistance, right? And it's also common, as we've seen before, these quick aggressive pullbacks have potential to squeeze highs, or even like here has potential to come back towards the top of its range, right? So in low floats, on these also BPTH. I mentioned before that you should kind of know what tickers have been manipulated in the past, moved in the past. BPTH is an HC Wainwright stock that's definitely been manipulated multiple times. It would make a lot of sense during a stronger market to see this get manipulated. So I saw this pullback, and I saw it rejecting VWAP, and I mentioned, I was like, oh, this is a pretty good structure to rotate back into this space, right? And it's only up about 60%. I was like, it's an I'm expecting, I wouldn't be surprised of a rotation, but the thing is, the reason you don't want to long this here is because there's almost no bids, and the volume started getting kind of thin. We started getting a bunch of sub 30K, 20K candles, not a lot of bid support. There's also ask stacked up here at the time, so there's no bids, or maybe like one bid here and there. We had multiple layers of ask kind of stacked up here. The volume wasn't super great. So that kind of gets rid of the idea of trying to make a read during the pre-market, right? So it's like, oh, we still got market open. So what do we know about market open longs, right? We know the best market open longs, just like INVO, like to pull back, right? I like to see the pullbacks, right? And I like to see bids on the pullbacks, right? Or in this case, bids get stacked. There's a bunch of bids stacked at 5. It took out those bids. They restacked the bids, right? That's nice to see, right? Swiping support levels. It's nice to see, right? $5 a key retail level. Swiping retail support levels. Nice to see, right? These are all good things. And then what do we have? We have a walk down here, and we have this painted 5.8 range, right? And the final piece of the puzzle is the market open volume, right? Usually like to see 500,000 shares. This is also almost a $6 stock, so 500, 600,000 shares on a $6 stock is pretty significant. It's nice market open volume, and then we just need to make a book map read, right? And we'll go over why wait until 933, 934 instead of doing 930, 931, right? So we'll go over the book on that. Started pushing with volume. In this market, I probably shouldn't even be taking this partial right here. This is where the 580 level is. But I said I didn't get any off here, but I like to take some off at high a day. It's swiped $6 and soaked right on the 1 minute 20. So there's a 1 minute 20 right here, 1 minute 20 right here. Swiped $6 by a few cents. Another, also high day clear out short trap. People like shorting into high day. They see high day, they blindly short into it, they get squeezed, right? And a lot of times high day clear out short traps will happen on the 1 minute 9, 1 minute 20, right? So took some off, and then they started pulling it. And they started pulling it through the 1 minute 20, and I just got out. And then we got a bid prop, right? Classic bid prop, right? So first, what do I see on this, right? Like I sold my long. This is not me shorting. This is me selling my long, and it downhalts, and it opens up under VWAP, and there's lower highs and lower lows. So like the way I look at things, guys, is when stocks are pulling back, I'm literally seeing just how aggressive. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at the lower highs, and I'm looking how aggressive the pullback is. Because I know, on these manipulated stocks, trading a lot of volume, a lot of times, unless somebody's insider dumping or dilution or something like that, it's, which is more of like a pre-market, TRX's example, pre-market pump into an intraday dump. But, this is a stock making new highs with consistent, nice volume intraday, right? I'm not expecting the stock to just go straight down, right? So it just creates a bunch of empty space. There's a VWAP right here. I'm like, all right, maybe it rotates back through the empty space. That doesn't necessarily mean I think it's going to break high day. I'm keeping that possibility open, but I'm thinking that we had a crazy parabolic, standard pre-market parabolic in a strong market, and then we had a crazy aggressive push in market open, right? And what you'll see is a lot of times when shorts get squeezed on pre-market levels, the counterintuitive thing about low floats is that the more aggressive the squeeze is, oftentimes the weaker the backside is, right? Which means the more aggressive the initial push is, the less likely longs are to work later on, right? So this is why I mean the first move is the best move. This is a market open long. This is a painted pre-market structure. Nice pullback, nice market open volume, nice book. This is the first move. The first move, because I don't count, the first move after the pullback, right? The first move is the best move. Then any long after this is probably not as less odds of working, and if it does work, it's harder to know where your entry is, right? So yeah, it was bid propping, but I was like, yeah, it's bid propping, but it'd be cool if it got above 7. I see 7 here, high days all the way up here. I'm like, it'd be cool if it broke 7, right? And maybe you can make a read, right? So I was like, all right, I'll just wait for 7. Sometimes I just pick levels, and I'm like, I'll wait for that level. So what do I see? It's higher low, higher low. It's bid propping. I'm like, cool. Let me wait for $7. It starts hitting that ask. There's like a 25,000 share ask right here. What does it do? I'm like, all right, let me see if it breaks it. It knifes. And then as this was knifing, I was like, please initiate back up. That'd be classic, classic low float entry would be fake the knife. And again, it's the big soak into a seller, right? So when this started initiating, when this wick started coming back up, I was like, I'm going to read that ask, right? But what I noticed, and we'll go over the book on this, what I noticed is that, I guess we'll start with the short first, and then I go back to the long, since I already did this. Am I blind? Oh, here. So here's the bid prop. The first thing we notice about the bid prop, there's actually not a lot of bids pushing. There's like oh, you can't see this. Sorry. There's actually not a lot of bids holding this thing up, which is pretty much, which always holds the risk. Whenever you see a stock on a chart that already made multiple squeezes, start prop, very clean bid prop. This is a big reason why you don't want to long stocks that already squeeze multiple times, right? Because a lot of times these pops have no bids. And now sometimes they go straight up without bids. It doesn't always knife, but there's always the potential that you get a quick knife move through the lack of bids on the book, right? That's always a risk. And then here's the move, right? So what do I know? Notice they stacked a bunch of ask in the 690s, right? There's a $7 ask, and they stacked a bunch of $6 690 ask. They knife it, they initiate it, and they filled a bunch of these asks pretty much all the way up to 7. Even though I think very few shares actually went through at 7. But they initiated up to 7. No bids followed it up. It started stalling. And I was looking left. I was like, oh, look how these asks got in through here, right? They really filled a good amount of ask at the 690 level. And this ask was put right here, right? Relatively, a lot of times on long chaps, you'll see that. You'll see relatively recent new ask get put on the book that get filled. And I just decided, like, hey, let me just go in the 680s here. Because it seems to be stalling. They filled the ask to the left. There wasn't a whole lot of bids showing up. I was like, I think it's worth just getting in the 680s. And then as soon as this popped and this ask showed up, and this, I was like, oh, that's a perfect long trap reaction, right? And then I actually took some off because I'm always trying to think of what's like the possible short trap pattern here. And a common short trap pattern is the bid prop. You break the trend and then you squeeze it for real. That's how like low floats often move, right? The way low floats often move is like if you want to like, and this is how midday longs sometimes work. And even then, this proves that it's so difficult to hit midday longs. Like you get prop, good volume, crack, wedge, squeeze. This is exactly how low floats move. And it was almost doing that here. I was like, oh man, like. Especially if you go back to the book, something really interesting happened here, which was after this long trap happened, they started, they put a 50,000 share ask on the book, and you can actually see it on the level 2 at little moments. There's like 50K here, 50K here, 50. And a lot of times on manipulated tickers, you know, whenever you see an oversized ask, and this could be 50K shares, 80K shares, 100K shares. Whenever you see that, purposely push a stock down. A lot of times they're pushing it down to some level. In this case, I saw them swipe 6 here, and I saw them fill these bids down here. I'm like, oh, let me cover some just in case, because I see they pulled the ask, right? So they push down to the level. They pull the ask and they start rotating it. So when I saw this rotation, I'm like, oh man, are they going to squeeze $7? I'm like, what are the possibilities here, right? Like, what could possibly happen? I was like, well, $7 looks really painted. There's $7 lower high, $7 lower high. Like maybe they do like a midday long trap. Maybe they do some crazy rotation that swipes 7 and they knife it. Maybe they squeeze through high a day. Like I'm thinking of all these things, and I'm like, you know, and my average is in the 680s and high days all the way. It turns out high day was in the 740s, not 760s. So I was like, oh man, my average seems a little bit far away. There's no trading above $7 here. You know, it could really squeeze. $7 looks, because you know there's a lot of variations in what happens in low flow. Sometimes this $7 bid prop becomes a short trap for later, and it becomes some crazy midday squeeze, right? And sometimes they do this, where they bid propped it, that ask pushed this down, they actually bid propped it again, and I'm like, well, I'll just send an alert above, 7 or at 7 and see what happens. And then I'm just chilling at my desk and I see a down halt. I was like, great. I was like, back to back bid props. And then I took a little bit off, and funny enough, again, this also shows you exactly how low floats move, is on this backside move here, right before the offering, they had this down halt, and they had this lower high here. And again, this is exactly how low floats move. This went from 6.75 to 5.2 down only. So what do I see? I see a bunch of empty space. So what do? They start soaking at support. And you'll see this a lot. You'll see volume get crazy thin. It looks like it's about to roll over. And then they start initiating it to the upside. A lot of times you see that. You see these like crazy thin wedges that last like, half an hour, sometimes even longer. And then the backside initiation kind of happens, right? But what do they do here? They attack this lower high, right? All these shorts who chased out of this downhaul, they rotated above everyone who had an average under, $6 here, right? So they swiped it with a third bid prop, a third one, and then I saw this pull back. I'm like, okay, cool. Like maybe it'll fade into end of day, and then they offered, and I covered into the offering. And then yeah, let me just show you what the market open long was like. Market open long. So like, again, I don't really like longing at 9:30, right? Every once in a while, you do get like a 9:30 support swipe and rip, but I'm usually not in those. I usually like the long at 9:31, 9:32, 9:33. And then when I saw this rotating, I was like, oh, there's not a lot of bids. All the bids are down here, which was kind of far away. I was like, I don't want to long in the 530s or chase in the 540s, By the time you get an average, your average might be in the 540s up here, and it's like, oh man, all these bids are like at like $5 and $4.80, and like they're all down here. I was like, that's not really what I want to see. They did throw up a little bit here, but I definitely, again, I didn't want to chase. I just saw this move push. I didn't want to chase. I'm like, okay, maybe it comes down to this bid and something happens, and it just came down. They took it out. And they swiped $5, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. They swiped $5, and I knew that was 5. I was like, okay, cool. So I was just keeping an eye on it, and it reclaimed, and I saw them restack the $5. So I was like, oh, that's really, really interesting. That's really interesting. I'm just going to see if it holds for a little bit. Again, nice book up here. Empty book to the upside. $5, and it held for about a minute. And I'm like, all right, I'll just go in. I'll just go in, and it was like 5.10s or something. I was like, I'll just go in down here. Because, $5 seems to be holding. I like that they restacked it. I like the pre-market structure. And yeah, it started rotating, and I'm like, oh man, this looks great. Here's that like 580 level getting pushed. And then, yeah, they just threw up a bunch of bids under it, and it up halted. And then it did crazy stuff. Here's that 1 minute 20. I'll go back to the chart there. Yeah. So here's the high day clear out after the uphold. Don't know why shorts love, in certain contexts on crazy extended tickers, it might be smart to, short out of the uphold. AGBA, I guess you could say. I used to take trades like AGBA up here out of the unhaul. I don't really do it anymore. This one had a crazy long trap. I actually missed that one, though. Did get this, though. Did short of this. Same long trap as Wiza. I was a little scared of this one. I put on less size, but I did short this. A hidden seller showed up at 181 on this candle, 834. Or 830. Yeah, there was like a hit. It pushed this 180 top. High day was 190. Then literally right on this candle and this candle, a 180 hidden seller showed up, and I saw, there's like a 20,000 share bid in the 170s that was getting taken out, and I shorted into it. But I was being careful because that creates another lower high. But I knew that this was up 300%. So I was like, okay, like let me just hold, and then went straight down. It was great. I'll show you the chart. Let's see. Well, bonus. Here's my TRX chart. Here's me shorting hidden seller at the top. Also, I remembered Wiza. I remember Wiza yesterday. So, again, low flows tend to just repeat the same patterns. Right? Another long trap at the top. 1 minute 200 cover. They threw up some bids here, and I'm like, oh, maybe they're going to rotate this and do something. And then yeah, I told my room, my Discord room, I was like, every cover too soon. Anyway, that's it for today. BPTH mostly. And yeah. It's always nice to be in an offering when it happens. So, but yeah, nice little long trap candle there. Liked it, right? I saw this one. Again, the reason I didn't take this one was because I really wanted above 7. But this one I felt had a much better signal, and was at 7 anyways, so decided to go in. Nice market open long. So, anyways, that's it for today. You guys have a good one. Information down below for the Discord. Well, we go long and short, so we do both. And yeah, you guys have a good one. See ya.